Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, July 26th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The COVID case surge and the spread of the Delta variant is sparking action by state and local officials. At the state level, new requirements are being implemented involving requiring vaccinations. Our coverage begins with KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne.
The COVID Delta variant continues to spread. In an effort to get ahead of the virus, Governor Gavin Newsom announced new requirements for California.
246,000 Californians are state employees. 246,000 Californians should be vaccinated. And if they're not vaccinated and cannot verify that they've been vaccinated, we are requiring that they get tested.
The new requirements will also include public and private healthcare settings.
We're not stopping just with state employees. Today, we're also announcing partnerships that include those like Kaiser, private sector now stepping up, organizations representing physicians and dentists, dialysis clinics stepping up, private sector clinics are committing to the same.
Newsom said he hopes other sectors will follow the new order.
And we hope this example of public and private leadership as it relates to vaccine verifications, vaccine mandates, and or mandated testing 1 to 2 times a week, with also commensurate PPP, or rather PPE, obligations as it relates to protective gear, N95 respirator masks, as an example, will lead to others to replicate this example.
The new health order comes as an increase in COVID rates are being seen, mostly in the unvaccinated community.
Individuals' choice not to get vaccinated is now impacting the rest of us in a profound and devastating and deadly way.
The order for state workers takes effect on August 2nd. Healthcare facilities have until August 9th. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
The Department of Veteran Affairs became the first major federal agency to require healthcare workers get vaccinated. Full immunization will be mandatory at the VA for physicians, nurses, dentists, and others who provide direct care to veterans. With Governor, San Diego County just reported new COVID-19 case numbers, actually 784 reported for Friday, 515 on Saturday, and 745 on Sunday. And that comes after more than 1,200 cases on Thursday. With Governor Newsom's announcement, pressure is on to put the vaccination protocols in place. KPBS reporter Melissa May spoke with a local healthcare provider about their plans.
California will require healthcare settings to verify that workers are fully vaccinated or tested regularly. Unvaccinated workers will be subject to at least weekly COVID-19 testing and will be required to wear appropriate PPE. Dr. Jim Schultz is the Chief Medical Officer at Neighborhood Healthcare with 16 facilities throughout San Diego and Riverside County.
We want our patients to feel comfortable that they're not going to come here and catch a disease that they didn't come in here with. So I think it's, our responsibility, our ethical duty to our patients to make sure that we don't make them any sicker than they are.
Approximately 70% of neighborhood healthcare employees are vaccinated. Schultz hopes the new healthcare protocols encourage the rest of the staff to get vaccinated.
Testing's not the most pleasant thing in the world, so that might convince some people. Also the threat of, if the test comes back positive, they have to stay off of work for several days, and they may or may not have sick time available to them.
Dr. Schultz agrees with Governor Newsom's new vaccine policy.
We need all of our healthcare workers. We need all of our staff because we're very busy right now with COVID, and we can't really afford to have healthcare personnel offline sick with COVID, dying from COVID, or just infected with COVID.
Newsom's orders also apply to workers in high-risk congregate settings, like jails and homeless shelters. Dr. Schultz says this is important.
Especially with this Delta variant, which is much more contagious than the other strains have been. It can really rip through any sort of congregate setting.
Schultz says neighborhood health care is making it easy for staff to get vaccinated.
We have, ever since the vaccines came out, we have set times where anybody can get any of our employees can get a vaccine. And really, if anybody asks for it at any time, we have a good supply of vaccines, and we can get them the vaccine.
Melissa May, KPBS News.
With less than half of the U.S. population fully vaccinated against COVID-19, cases are surging around the country as the Delta variant targets the unvaccinated. Many public health experts are now urging a return to precautions like masking and avoiding crowded indoor spaces. Isabel Rosales has the latest.
New cases of COVID-19 are surging around the country. More than 34 states seeing an increase of 50% in just the last week amid the rapid spread of the Delta variant.
These Delta variants produce so much more virus in the body, 1,000 times more than the parent strain.
Hospitalization rates in the hardest hit areas are climbing. Patients now younger on average than earlier in the pandemic. 97% of those hospitalized are unvaccinated.
We're having people that are very young with no preconditions, and they're getting pretty sick and sometimes don't make it out of the ICU.
Many health experts now urging a return to mitigation efforts like masking.
The transmission dynamics of the Delta variant are clearly different and more aggressive. There's data being collected now that surely will inform recommendations down the road, but here in Louisiana, there's absolutely no time to wait on that.
As the push to get Americans vaccinated flags amid widespread hesitancy, there are growing calls for employers to institute vaccine mandates. On Monday, 50 healthcare groups, including the American Medical Association, issued a joint statement calling for all healthcare and long-term care employers to mandate employees be vaccinated.
When you go into a hospital, you want the assurance that you're not going to be given a disease you didn't come there to get.
Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
A reminder, everyone age 12 and older may be eligible for a vaccine. For more information about vaccinations and where to get one, visit our website, kpbs.org, and click on the vaccines link right on our homepage. It's been a deadly month for cyclists in San Diego County. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the recent spike in fatal crashes is prompting calls for local governments to move faster on safety improvements.
She was kind and brilliant and beautiful.
Kristen Victor remembers her friend and colleague Laura Shin, a prominent local architect who was struck and killed by a driver last Tuesday while riding her bike up Pershing Drive in Balboa Park.
Well, it's really close to home because we both advocated for a safer, more sustainable San Diego. It was in our hearts.
Shin was one of 5 people who were killed while biking in San Diego County over the past month.
Safe streets now! Safe streets now!
Dozens of activists gathered near the crash site to call on San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and other local leaders to build safe bike infrastructure with a greater sense of urgency. Plans to add protected bike lanes to Pershing Drive have been on the books for nearly a decade, but they've been repeatedly delayed, as have a host of other bike safety projects across the county.
The choice to ride should not cost us our lives. This is the time for our government leaders to act quicker than ever before.
The activists want Gloria to commit to building 25 miles of protected bike lanes in San Diego each year. Gloria's office says it's working on plans to build bike infrastructure more quickly, but the mayor has not yet committed to a timeline. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The U.S. military's combat mission in Iraq will be done by the end of the year. That's the announcement from President Biden today during a meeting with Iraq's Prime Minister at the White House. The plan is to shift operations to a strictly advisory and training mission as American forces step back in their fight against the Islamic State group. More details about the timeline are expected to be released later. With U.S. forces pulling out of Afghanistan, there's an urgent need to evacuate Afghans who have helped in the mission. If that doesn't happen, those people will likely be targeted by the Taliban. The Biden administration has told Congress it needs $1 billion in emergency funding for the effort to get visas to those Afghans. Negotiations are underway, and a top Republican senator says lawmakers are close to reaching a deal. Tomorrow, the San Diego City Council is scheduled to vote on extending a contract with ShotSpotter. It provides police with surveillance technology that detects and tracks gunshots in some of the city's neighborhoods. KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim says community advocates want city leaders to delay the vote.
Since 2016, San Diego has used ShotSpotter audio sensors that cover 3.6 square miles in the predominantly Black and Latino Southeast neighborhoods of Lincoln Park, Valencia Park, O'Farrell, and Skyline. Hamaida Yousefi of the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, together with other coalition members from Trust SD, say there's not enough clear evidence the technology works as advertised.
I think we need to have a more robust conversation about is this actually curbing violence or not? Because what we've seen from investigative reporting is that it's not.
According to the company, ShotSpotter audio sensors are attached to the top of buildings, electric poles, or light stops. When they hear a shot, they record it, timestamp it, locate it, and then send the data to an incident review center, where people verify the sound is a gunshot before alerting the SDPD. City council members are set to decide whether to extend the city's contract for an additional year, with the option of extending it another 4 years, at a total price tag of around $1.1 million. Yousefi is concerned that the council will be making this decision without any of the measures that the council unanimously approved last November that set up regulatory practices for reviewing the city's use of surveillance technology.
The reality is we're living in an even more technological world, and we need to have a process in which the city is able to determine which kinds of surveillance technologies make sense and doesn't make sense. And ramming things like ShotSpotters through the process is not how we do that. That's not responsible governing.
In June, the SDPD released new numbers showing a surge in gun violence. And in a July 1st letter to city council members, department officials wrote that the tool, quote, enables a new normal where police can provide a consistent, rapid, and precise response, which will lead to increased community trust. Khalid Alexander of Pillars of the Community says the tool does the exact opposite and wants to see all ShotSpotters out of San Diego.
We're perfectly capable of picking up a cell phone and calling 911 if needed. And so ShotSpotters are really just another excuse to kind of over-police our neighborhoods, to come in and you know, pull people over and essentially, you know, come into places where they haven't been asked to come.
The City Council will meet virtually on Tuesday, and the meeting is open to the public beginning at 11 a.m. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
A San Diego man says he experienced banking while Black when he tried to cash a check at a Bank of America in Pacific Beach. Here's KPBS's Amita Sharma with more on that story.
John Pittman III is a lawyer who also spent 19 years working in the finance industry. He knows the banking business.
And, you know, they verify if there's an issue.
So the San Diego resident was prepared in early 2020 when he went to a Bank of America branch in Pacific Beach to cash a $12,000 check from an insurance settlement. The payment from the Geico insurance company was a B of A check. But just in case, he brought additional paperwork from Geico and 3 forms of identification: a driver's license, passport, and birth certificate. Yet that wasn't enough for the branch's assistant manager.
She came back and then she was telling me that she can't cash it because my name had the 3rd on my identification, but the 3rd wasn't written on the check.
But the suffix "a third" on Pittman's name was written on the rest of the Geico documents. He suggested the assistant manager contact Geico to confirm his identity.
And she's like, no, we can't. We have no way. Even if we call to verify, we have no way to notate that we verified.
Pittman says he called Geico on his cell phone, put the insurance representative on speakerphone to address the assistant manager's concerns.
And the assistant manager says, well, I don't know who you are. You could be just one of his friends he's calling.
Pittman again asked her to call Geico. She refused to make that call, but said she made another.
Said she's going to talk to the manager. And she comes back and says, we've notified the authorities. So you're trying to steal the money from the real John Pittman.
Pittman says on the advice of the Geico representative, he exited the bank but was left with an aching thought.
So I'm thinking, this would not have happened if I wasn't a black person. You know, I just cannot see them calling the police on every person that they get a check that doesn't have junior or the third or whatever on it. That just doesn't make sense.
Pittman says the B of A branch manager told him more than a year later that the assistant manager was only pretending to call the police. KPBS tried to interview that B of A branch manager, but he declined. B of A corporate spokesman Bill Hallidan says it is standard industry practice not to cash a check if the recipient name and identification don't precisely match to protect against potential fraud. But is it standard industry practice to accuse a customer of stealing and then threaten to call the police, as Pittman says B of A did with him?
It's unfortunately not uncommon for us to hear stories of racialized and racist behavior in financial institutions.
Hudson Munoz is a research analyst with the Committee for Better Banks, which represents industry workers and consumers.
It is a problem when the first response at any organization is to involve the police rather than to treat the customer as a truthful person, especially, given the materials that this person had to back up the identity.
The term advocates use to describe these situations is banking while black. Black customers have long complained of being confronted with skepticism, hurdles, and calls to police while seeking basic transactions. Ed Golding is executive director of MIT's Golub Center for Finance and Banking. He says race isn't likely the only issue in Pittman's case. The size of the check and the fact that Pittman wasn't a customer were also factors, but he says they don't excuse the assistant manager's alleged actions.
It seems like from the facts of this case, it was a very inappropriate way of saying, go away, we don't want to serve you.
Bank of America ultimately sent a letter to Pittman standing by its policy. However, the letter also stated, quote, "We regret any inconvenience you may have encountered as a result of this matter and apologize for any service provided that did not meet your expectations." But Pittman wanted the bank to apologize specifically for the assistant manager's behavior. He also asked for monetary damages, which the bank refused. He says he still feels demoralized.
It makes you feel 2 inches tall a little bit. It makes you feel targeted.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
California's largest wildfire getting bigger and more destructive. The Dixie Fire merged with a smaller fire in Northern California and destroyed homes in a remote area called Indian Falls. Firefighters are having a tough time with the terrain, and so far containment is at 22%. Despite evacuation orders, some people stayed home to protect their properties and animals.
It's very stressful, scary at times. Last night you could see the glow over that hill right there, and the firefighters put it out or knocked it down, to where all of a sudden the glow is gone, and I was just relieved.
Firefighters are making progress against the nation's largest wildfire, the Bootleg Fire in southern Oregon. It's 53% contained. Fires are also burning in Washington, Idaho, and Montana.
The upper level low that brought us some much needed moisture earlier today is slowly going to be drifting west, and along with it, it's going to take the moisture. It's going to be exiting as we head into Tuesday, but there is still the possibility for a few storms, mainly dry thunderstorms in some of the mountains and a higher terrain here for your Tuesday and Wednesday. Still has some flash flood watches that are posted here for, again, mainly the higher terrain here through the rest of this evening. After that, they will be allowed to expire. Temperatures tonight in the metro falling off into the low 70s. We'll see plenty of cloud cover here as that marine layer really thickens up near the coast. Temperatures in Oceanside getting down to 67 degrees for that overnight low. Chula Vista getting down to 69. Borrego Springs upper 70s there for you into the overnight period. And again, you can see plenty of cloud cover here still lingering for some of the coastal regions because of that upper level low moving offshore and increasing that marine layer. Temperatures for tomorrow are going to be on the rise here Tuesday. It's a dry and warm day for most. We'll watch spotty afternoon storms here with that monsoonal moisture mainly in the Four Corners region. Temperatures on your Tuesday afternoon getting up into the low 80s. Escondido, Ramona warming up to 89 degrees there. But again, I mentioned that possibility of dry thunderstorms, which are storms that typically have, say, less than 1/10 of an inch of rain. As that upper level low moves offshore and begins to track northward, there's still going to be some energy lingering here and just a little bit of moisture, which could spark up additional wildfires. So we'll be watching that threat here for your Tuesday and Wednesday. Near the coast, not a whole lot of change. Temperatures in the upper 70s to about 80 degrees, a mixture of sunshine and clouds, and not much rain beyond today. Further inland, temperatures also not changing a whole lot, mid to upper 80s. No real significant rain chances here in the forecast. I think in the mountains, we could have a stray storm or two here Tuesday or Wednesday. Temperatures generally sitting in the low to mid 70s. And in the deserts, it is the heat that is on once again triple digits in the forecast over the next 5 days. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
The ocean shoreline near the border was only open for 1 week before it was forced to close again because of sewage contamination. The closure includes all beaches from the international border to the south end of Seacoast Drive. Signs will remain in place until ocean water sampling results meet state health standards for recreational use. This is the 4th time this year the beach has been closed because of pollution. Imperial Beach residents say it gives their town a bad reputation.
So it just brings a bad little stigma into it and makes the businesses suffer because people already have that idea that it's not like the best place to come visit when it's actually a pretty fun little town to come to.
At the end of 2019, the United States-Mexico-Canada trade deal promised $300 million to go toward long-term projects that would address the contamination issue. There is still no decision on how the money will be spent, nor a timeline. California's drought is drying up the second largest reservoir in the state, Lake Oroville. When it's full, the lake sits around 900 feet, but water levels have been dropping fast in recent weeks. Now it's down to less than 700 feet. As Marissa Perlman reports, the hydroelectric power plant will be shut down by August, and it could take months before it gets turned back on.
It's dropping really, really fast. There won't be much ramp much longer.
As the water level drops, construction crews rebuild the boat launch along the Oroville Dam.
It's getting lower and lower.
So boaters and anglers can make their way onto what's left of it. Tim Howell has been coming here for 30 years.
We come for a week every summer, so it's lower than we've ever seen it for sure.
And dropping by the day. This was the lake at the end of May. A mere 8 weeks later, the lake is now just over a quarter full. Ryan Jager was fishing where he's standing now just a month ago. This is usually underwater.
This is usually underwater, yeah.
The water's so low, the Department of Water Resources says the Edward Hyatt power plant will go offline in August for the first time ever. Neighbors worry it creates the perfect storm, meeting the peak of wildfire season and summer heat and an anticipated power crunch.
There's not that much water, so they're not going to get that much power.
But with water dropping on average 1 foot per day, the Department of Water Resources is still outflowing more than 2,000 gallons per minute of water into the Feather River. Why? DWR says it's required for critical water supply, fishery needs, and to prevent saltwater intrusion into drinking water. Environmental needs avid anglers like Noah say are important despite the little water left.
It's really important for the salmon because if they can't get up the river, they can't spawn, and then you're killing generations and generations of fish that just they'll never come back.
For Tim and his family, they're soaking up the water now.
We'll take advantage of it while we can. I don't know that they'll be able to in another week or two.
As this beloved lake continues to disappear. We haven't seen the lake this low in nearly half a century. At full capacity, the power plant generates enough power to serve 800,000 homes. Now leaders say they'll be pulling power from other facilities across the state.
That was Marissa Perlman reporting. The lake is only about 12 feet from reaching its record low, which was set back in 1977.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, why this new COVID surge is spurring moves toward mandatory vaccines. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. California will require state employees and all healthcare workers to show proof of COVID vaccination or get tested weekly. About 62% of all eligible Californians are fully vaccinated. The order comes as coronavirus cases rise statewide, with the Delta variant making up about 80% of infections. San Diego County reported more than 2,000 cases in the past 3 days. 5 cyclists have been killed in collisions with cars over the past month in San Diego County, and activists are calling on San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and other local leaders to speed up implementation of protected bike lanes. They want Gloria to commit to building 25 miles of protected bike lanes in San Diego each year. The mayor has not yet committed to a timeline. Tomorrow, the San Diego City Council is expected to vote on whether to extend the city's contract with ShotSpotter. The surveillance technology has detected and tracked gunshots in some of the city's neighborhoods since 2016. Community advocates want it gone, calling it an excuse to over-police neighborhoods. The council will vote on a 4-year extension, which would cost $1.1 million. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabolsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.